What's up, everyone? Josh Collins, Century 21 United here. Bit of an impromptu and off the cuff kind of talk today, but I just wanted to quickly spend a few minutes talking about and summarizing some of the new regulatory changes or the new regulations that the government announced just this past Tuesday with respect to some of the real estate changes that are going to be, or at least that are being proposed and that are taking effect in April as of next year, so April 2023, not right away, and that's an important point too. I'm hearing a lot of chatter. I've been getting a few calls from friends, family, clients, people who are wondering, well, A, what are these changes exactly? B, what do they mean? And are they going to have any impact going forward? So I thought a good starting point would be to at least dive into what some of these regulations or the announcements actually are on a point-to-point basis, categorize them in terms of importance and what they mean to us, and go from there. I don't want to spend too much time today diving into whether I think these changes are going to have a big impact. That's definitely going to be the focus of a future video. But again, these changes don't come into effect until April of next year. So we have some time to dive into that. And as well, maybe this is, now that I'm thinking about it, this might be a point that maybe I'll reiterate again at the end, but we still don't have a lot of detail about what these changes actually mean as far as these regulatory changes that the government has come out and announced. Part of that is because there's still quite a bit of time between now and when they will take effect. But with the open bidding process, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, which I said mentally I wasn't going to, but I will. The open bidding process is an example. There's a lot that's going to go into that we still don't yet know. So I feel like we all kind of need to keep an open mind at this point and realize that some of these announcements, even though they've been put in writing and put out to the media, which then comes down to us as of Tuesday this week or earlier this week, there's still a lot that can change and a lot that can happen with some of those ingredients and the aspects of the things that the government we're talking about. So I think we kind of need to take things with a grain of salt at this point in time. But let's talk about what some of those changes were, and we'll start from there, or what the regulations were, and we'll start with those. So the first regulation they're proposing a change to is a name change, and that relates to the name of the piece of legislation that was written by the province a long time ago, REBBA, the Real Estate Business and Brokers Act. And that piece of legislation lays out some of the rules that we as salespeople, salespersons, brokers, the brokerages have to follow when we're conducting our real estate activities on a day-to-day basis. They're proposing a name change to REBBA by way of formally calling it, and this is one of the announcements that came out on Tuesday, is the formal name change to TRESA. So that's the Trust and Real Estate Services Act. This is a piece of legislation that's written by the province, and there's a regulatory body, a provincial regulatory body in Ontario. That body is referred to as RECO. So that's the Real Estate Council of Ontario. They're basically the body that carries out the governance or the monitoring, the regulation of those rules that the province has laid out in that legislation. So the first change is that the name of that piece of legislation is changed. So the next change relates to an update of the Code of Ethics. And the Code of Ethics is a portion of that piece of legislation that's being renamed to the Trust and Real Estate Services Act. It outlays some of the ethical obligations that we as salespeople, brokers, brokerages have to the clients or the consumers that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. This, again, relates back to some of the rules and obligations that we have to follow. The real estate market is dynamic. It's changing on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. And a lot of the behaviors that have kind of produced themselves as a result of some of those changes have come under scrutiny in the past, probably more than just a few years. But I think this has really prompted a rewrite of the Code of Ethics to try and get at some of those issues. Secondarily to that and related to that is the third change, and it's empowering RECO, again, the Real Estate Council of Ontario. That's that provincial governing body that polices some of those or enforces some of those rules under that piece of legislation, empowering them to broaden their disciplinary actions. So one of their primary mandates is to provide a disciplinary board that looks into consumer complaints against registrants, salespeople, brokers, brokerages, when issues come about. RECO is basically the police in that equation that will then get involved and determine whether rules were broken, obligations weren't met, ethics were not as they should be, to put it politely. But now one of these changes under this new under the new act is to broaden their disciplinary scope, where it empowers them to have a bit more ability to look into these issues and, rightfully so, pass down discipline on people when they've done wrong. And as an aside, one specific change within that latter point that I thought was quite interesting What they're actually proposing to do is right on RECO's website. RECO has, and they have had all along, a website that's very detailed. There's a bunch of information on there, but that's also kind of the hub where a consumer would formally propose a complaint to RECO and bring it to their attention. One change they're proposing is they're going to implement a tool whereby, at least as far as I've read so far and as far as I understand, you're going to be able to look up a particular registrant and see their history of any complaints or issues that have come about that have been brought against them. So I think the real goal of all this is to provide a bit more transparency as far as real estate professionals go, but also to make it known that the disciplinary powers by RECO are being enforced a little bit stronger than maybe they have in the past, which I think is a great thing. The next change relates to how consumers will interact with registrants and brokerages in general. And when I say registrants, I probably should have clarified this at the beginning. A registrant can be a real estate salesperson, it can be a real estate broker. There's a few different terms for it, but the classic term that I feel like everybody's more familiar with is real estate agent. So that would be, a registrant is someone that is licensed to practice real estate. So one of the changes they're proposing is how you, as a consumer, someone of the general public, will interact with a realtor that they've quote unquote hired. Um, Traditionally speaking, that would take the form of either a client relationship or a customer relationship. The difference between the two really boils down to some of the obligations on multiple different levels that we owe to the people that we work with, depending on what type of representation arrangement that's taken. And again, those two forms were client and customer. What they're proposing now is a do away with that, whereby they're going to keep the client aspect, so you can sign up to be represented by a real estate office and that representative that you're working with as a client, or go to what they're calling a self-represented model, whereby you wouldn't be represented by that realtor or by that office. You would be representing yourself in that transaction. So I think they're creating a bit more of a clear divide between folks that want real estate representation and folks who do not and feel like they can represent themselves. So the next change relates to something that they're calling a consumer information guide. So again, we don't have much detail on this, and it sounds like it's being developed in partnership with both RECO, so the Real Estate Council of Ontario, and OREA, that's the OREA, the Ontario Real Estate Association. So those are kind of the two provincial players as far as real estate rules, regulations, and education in Ontario go. So it sounds like it's being developed in large part and in close relationship with real estate professionals and people who are actually in the business, which is a good start. I'm keenly interested to see what this booklet's going to look like, because I can speak for myself, and I know a few of my colleagues and coworkers as well. A lot of us already have information pamphlets or booklets that we provide to certain clients, depending on circumstances that you're in, that will give some of that information already. So I'm quite curious to see what they come out with in terms of the contents and the information that'll be contained within these information guides. But I think this is a step in the right direction. And I've always felt, not to say an element of pride, but I always felt like if I was in a consumer's shoes and I was working with someone that I hired to help me either purchase or sell real estate, a guide of some sort to help kind of get some information and something that I could just simply refer back to after hours or whenever I felt like I needed to brush up on something would be really helpful. So I feel like that's something that all of us should have been doing all along. So it is nice to see that they're trying to standardize that and come out with a means to get some information more readily into people's hands. So the last change, and this is the one that's created all the fuss, relates to opening up the bidding process, or creating what they're calling an open bid process as opposed to a closed bid process. So this process behind this all relates back to a delayed offer presentation. So you put your house up on the market, you're holding offers. That's kind of the term that I feel from a public standpoint has become a bit more acknowledged. But that concept of holding offers is what they refer to as a delayed offer presentation, whereby you go up on the market, you determine some predetermined or some future date where you're going to be reviewing offers from everybody that's had an opportunity to come through the house during that few day to 1 to 2 week stretch, however long your holding offer period was. At that point in time, you will review offers. The challenge all along has been that's a blind process where all the individual offers or the people behind each of those individual offers are not aware of the contents of those competing offers that they're up against. So that's the blind element to it, where you're writing an offer, you don't know where the other offers are, price, closing date, conditions and terms, deposit, all the ingredients of an offer. You don't know what you're up against. So that's the blind element of it. What the government is proposing within these new regulations is to open up that blind aspect of that process and make it an open style process, whereby all of a sudden those details, the substance of other offers that you're competing against, will be known to you. They will be known to everybody. It will be more of an open platform where offers are known to everybody and everybody is on the same playing field. One thing that's important to note with this, and this is what's created a lot of chatter and conversation as well in terms of how they've gone about implementing this, they're giving the homeowner the ability to choose what style they're going to take. So everything I just explained about opening up that blind bid process is not mandatory. That's not how it's going to work, black and white, set in stone as of April 1st, 2023. As of April 1st, 2023, a homeowner, so if, again, we'll use that example of you selling your house, you will have the choice to decide whether you want to participate in that open bid style or whether you want to remain with the traditional closed bid style type of situation. So that's going to be a really interesting process and probably just natural process to see unravel. How is that going to take shape? What's that going to look like? What's going to be involved in the decision-making process as to how you want to go about which option you're going to take within that process? If you do decide to go with the open bid platform and process, how is that going to work? That's one of the things that when I first read these regulations of the announcement on Tuesday, that's the first question that came to mind for me when I got to that portion of the announcement. What platform is there going to be for us and or the homeowner in that case to help facilitate that process? Are they coming out with a platform? Are they coming out with software? They're coming out with a database. There needs to be a general construct in terms of how that's going to be facilitated. Otherwise, it's going to create a lot of gray areas. And that boils back to a lot of the changes in these announcements in terms of these regulatory enhancements for the powers that be. Again, RICO as a disciplinary committee. A lot of those disciplinary issues as far as complaints go come up because people are sort of taking advantage of gray areas as they go and making their own rules as they go, whether it's intentional or not. But I feel like, to roll it back to what we're talking about here, there has to be a very clear, concise construct as to how a process like this is going to work. So I'm keenly interested, and I know many other people are, as you can tell, it's all over the news and it's what a lot of people are talking about. How is this process actually going to work? And what are the ingredients that will, in a step-by-step fashion, get you from the beginning to knowing what the right decisions are, or at least the right choices are, to kind of help you make an informed decision about how you're going to go. So again, these changes are not taking effect until April 1st of 2023. I suspect there's a lot that's going to happen, and maybe a few things that will change between then and now that might have an impact on a lot of these new regulations. We'll see how this all shapes out. And for now, like I said at the beginning, I just wanted to leave this to, these are the announcements, these are the changes. Again, with the amount of time we have between now and when they actually take effect, I'll probably revisit a couple of those, especially the last one, because there's the whole conversation of what impact is that going to have in terms of, will it roll prices backwards? Will you see things calm a little bit, or will they chug right through those changes and continue to go in a direction that we're accustomed to seeing now over the past few years? I have my 2 cents on that, but I don't want to drag this video on too much longer. I'll probably save that for an upcoming future video, something not too long down the road. But again, if you have questions about this in the meantime and you want to connect and chat about any one of these changes or that last one in particular, I'm always happy to chat about it. I'll be the first one to admit that we still have a lot to learn about it. And I've been listening to a couple of interviews and I've been reading articles about it, and there's a number of opinions that are already out there. We're in the early stages, and I have heard people refer to pilot programs that are already started as far as homes that are being sold under this open bid process. I personally haven't seen any yet. I'm hearing people talk about it. Until I see it, I'm a bit reluctant to comment on I can comment on what I think is going to come about it, but again, that'll be a future video. But I think we need to sit back and sort of take in what's happening from here on out to see how this is all going to boil up. But the point of that was, if you have questions and you want to chat about it, reach out. I'm always happy to chat about these things. I think these are really interesting topics, especially that last one. It's got the potential to have a big impact on the day-to-day in terms of how things happen within the process of selling your home. What impact and what changes they have big picture wise will remain to be seen. But again, I'm happy to chat about that. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch.